Thank you all very much for dialing in. Let me very briefly introduce myself. My name is Tatiana Java. I'm a senior energy specialist here in ESMAP. In ESMAP, we are the largest and oldest trust fund supporting energy programs around the world. And for over 40 years, we've delivered cutting-edge research, technical assistance, and advisory support to our country partners, policymakers, and key stakeholders. It is my great pleasure to welcome all of you today to this exciting discussion. First of all, let me just provide a very brief run of show. Our first speaker who will help us provide the opening remarks and set the context for our conversation is Chandra Govindarajalu, who is our ESMAP practice manager for renewable energy and foundations of energy. Following Chandra's remarks, we will dive right into the substance with a joint presentation from the Cross-Boundary Innovation Lab team and from Adwa Partners. Those of you in the audience and dialing in, please feel free to drop your questions in the chat throughout the webinar. I will read them during the Q&A portion. Also, during the Q&A, you will equally be able to raise your hand and ask a question directly. Please note that we are recording this webinar, and we will make the recording available to all attendees soon after the conclusion, along with the presentation. With that, let me hand over to our first speaker, Chandra Govindarajalu, the ESMAP practice manager. Over to you, Chandra.
Thank you, Tatia. Welcome all. It's a pleasure to be joining this event, and my sincere thanks especially to our partners from Cross-Boundary and Adwa Partners for being able to join today on this important topic. You know, as you all know, I mean, the challenge of energy access is phenomenal. Over 600 million people do not have electricity, and we are constantly looking for further innovations and solutions to tackle that problem. So we have been, the progress has been made over so many years, and things are improving. Yet the SDG 7 goals are far from being able to be met. So, in that context, a new platform that the World Bank and the African Development Bank have launched, the M300 initiative, is really path-breaking in that sense, that it brings a new level of momentum among our countries to be able to try and reach that goal. 29 countries have agreed on a compact as part of the M300 initiative. So it's really a great occasion for us to be able to grab this moment and try to make more of that happen through DRE solutions, and especially mini-grid solutions. I think it is expected that about 50% will be through DRE solutions, and that's quite significant. And it is not only that it is going to be faster, and it brings the much needed electricity service at the basic level right away, and more affordable to people. So as such, this moment, we are seeing that the mini grid options are expanding, and one issue that always has been important for viability of mini grids has been the issue of demand, and so how do we make the mini grid viable? Has always been a question that I have grappled with, and I'm looking forward to the discussion today. Productive uses and appliances, these are the demand side aspects that are so critical to make this viable and scalable. So we are saying that increasing the productive use in mini grids can create a situation where everybody wins, not just the developers, but also the most importantly the consumers and the government, and in trying to reach the access goals. So it brings a much if we are able to crack this and do it in a way that can be scaled, it's going to be a winner for all. So I really look forward to this discussion, and with that, I would like to hand it back to Tatia. Tatia, over to you. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Chandra. So before I hand over to our distinguished presenters, let me just very quickly introduce them. Tombo Banda is an engineer and sustainability expert with a focus on closing the energy access gap for over 500 million people in sub-Saharan Africa. She is based in Nairobi, where she leads the cross-boundary mini-grid innovation lab. Her work entails trialing new business ideas that drive commercial viability and ultimately public and private investments into mini-grids. Tombo holds a Master's of Philosophy in Engineering for Sustainable Development from the University of Cambridge and a Master's in Engineering and Mechanical Engineering from the Imperial College London. She's a chartered engineer registered with the Institution of Mechanical Engineers, UK. Dr. Teferi Gizmo has extensive experience in public health, development, and consulting. He's currently serving as Managing Director at Adwa Partners, where he focuses on program implementation, leadership, and development. He was a senior advisor at McKinsey & Company in the past, where he specialized in business development, organizational transformation, and economic development. His diverse consulting experience also includes senior positions with the African Development Bank Group and the Ethiopian Capital Market Authority, highlighting his broad impact in strategic development and human resource programs. We're very fortunate to have both of you joining us today. Without further ado, I'm handing right over to you, Tombo, for this fascinating presentation.
Amazing. Thanks so much, Tatia, for that great introduction. And thanks, Chandra, as well, for setting the scene so well. So let me dive straight into it. So today I am going to be covering three things, really, or we hope to cover three things over the course of this presentation. Firstly, what are roadshows and why do we need them anyway? Secondly, how do they play out in practice? And thirdly, if these roadshows are useful, how do we use them to scale up more PUE on mini-grid sites? So, to get a sense check of the audience and your current views, we're going to do a quick poll. What do you think is the most critical barrier impacting the scaling of PUE today? So, Tatia, if you could launch that poll. You'll actually have to let me know when it's done because I can't see it with my sharing my screen. So as you launch it and the results start coming in, I'll ask you to let me know what it's looking like.
So far we have 50% affordability access to finance. Quite a few more responses coming in, Tombo. Go ahead, colleagues, don't be shy. This is obviously the critical question.
Yes, it's a very critical question. Yeah, so I'll highlight some of these key barriers and how we intend to approach them in the roadshow. But I wanted to get a sense of where we think the key barriers are and what do we tackle first. And I want to get a sense of how we, think about tackling these barriers for this roadshow. So are we still, yeah?
Yeah, we have 27 responses, Tombo, and most of them, 52%, are affordability, access to finance. The second one is electricity reliability and pricing. The third one is access to fit-for-purpose competitive machinery and appliances. So very much within the focus of your presentation, so go ahead.
Excellent. So there's a general consensus that affordability, access to financing is one of the big barriers. Okay. Also, it's forcing me now to do the presentation, but that's fine. I will just share my screen again. What is the presentation with a few technical challenges? Okay, we're back. Great. So let's get going. What are roadshows and why do we need them anyway? So Chandra has set out the context of why appliance financing is relevant to mini-grids. But essentially, we recognize that appliance financing and the employment of productive uses of energy are really fundamental elements of sustainable mini-grids because they do this essential service of driving demand. A co-benefit of appliance financing and productive use of energy is that they also contribute to economic development of communities. So ultimately, these communities also benefit from improved livelihoods and increasing incomes, where appliance financing is available. So what evidence do we have that appliance financing supports viable mini-grids? So appliance financing happens to be the Innovation Lab's oldest and most successful prototype. We've run over 3 iterations of this prototype, starting from 2019 to date. And essentially, working with developers, we offer appliances and equipment to end users on credit and track their consumption in the years following. So here we show data from 5 sites across Nigeria and Kenya, where we see that, in the year following the onset of appliance financing, the average consumption per user actually increased 48% where it was offered, versus a reduction of 39% where it was not. So this data shows and really confirms what has been observed more broadly and further evidenced since, that appliance financing of income-generating machinery and the productive use of energy really allows mini-grid developers to mini-grid customers to sustainably consume electricity over prolonged periods of time. And this really provides that demand base that developers need for viable mini-grids. So I think it's safe to say that across the sector, the benefits of offering appliance financing to mini-grid customers have really been well understood, including by developers themselves, governments, development partners. But despite these benefits, appliance financing initiatives and programs have really been hard to scale at country level. And we've discussed some of these, key barriers to uptake at the, poll in the beginning. But really, these barriers exist on the supply side, on the demand side, and they're really aggravated by enabling environment challenges. So on the supply side, the key barrier is accessibility to end users. So first of all, can end users even get the appliances and machinery that is required for productive uses of energy? Suppliers sometimes are unwilling to bear the cost of servicing these customers beyond their established supply chain. Sometimes these users don't even have reliable or affordable electricity in the first place to operate PUE technologies or appliances. And, where they do have connections, sometimes these frequent outages or surges can lead them to preferring alternative solutions where they can understand the performance over time and it's guaranteed. So this would be, for example, diesel-powered machinery. On the demand side, the key barriers include budget constraints, lack of access to affordable credit, and lack of awareness of potential offerings. So in terms of budget, households tend to have a fixed energy budget, restricting their spending on electricity, and also a limited ability to purchase new equipment and appliances outright. They don't have access to affordable credit. Many of these end users, lack comprehensive credit histories, and financiers find it expensive to conduct credit assessments on these customers. And so, financiers end up offering these rural customers high interest rates, resulting in low credit uptake rates. And, these high interest rates are also driven by the fact that these customers are geographically dispersed, and it's difficult to collect loan repayments and time-consuming as well on the financier's perspective. Thirdly, on the lack of awareness for potential offering, sometimes customers are just unaware of what appliances are available to them or any financing solutions that could make them more affordable. Lastly, when we think about the policy and regulatory gaps, there is, generally a missed opportunity here because there are limited incentives for suppliers and financiers to really serve this customer demographic. And critically, there's also a dearth of policies that link renewable energy generation to other development priorities. So rarely do you see how agricultural priorities on a national level are linked to, irrigation that might be linked to renewable energy generation. And this is really a missed opportunity for scaling PUE in our view. So where do appliance roadshows come into the picture? Well, appliance roadshows are really not a new phenomenon, and they've been successfully used in multiple campaigns worldwide to achieve energy access goals. And my favorite example that I always use is actually from the USA. So in the late 30s, the Rural Electrification Authority really had to demonstrate the benefits of electricity to these farmers in these rural communities and offer them not only machinery, but also things like washing machines to incentivize these rural farmers to sign up for electricity. Examples I show here are in India and in Bangladesh. So in India, the Ujala LED campaign was a mobile campaign that brought pop-up counters with LED bulbs to customers where they were to allow them to easily swap out their incandescent bulbs. And lastly, in Bangladesh, famously, solar home systems were mainstreamed by providing village demos and also offering microfinance in those communities at the point of sale. So what is it we propose here? We think that similarly, appliance financing roadshows could provide a one-stop shop approach to scaling productive uses of energy across sub-Saharan Africa's mini-grids. What would it look like? So firstly, it would be a program that's offering appliances and income-generating machinery together with affordable financing to mini-grid customers at their location. Why do we need it and what would be the value proposition? So I think the key benefits are what we've already discussed. Firstly, those end users really get to enjoy the full benefit of their electricity connection and they can improve their income generating potential. Secondly, this increased consumption supports mini-grid revenues and profitability. And thirdly, this approach really propels private sector participation. And this ensures that appliance financing can scale without significant subsidies from the development finance community or from governments. Lastly, how is it done? So this is what we aim to speak to for the rest of the presentation. But essentially, it's to convene key stakeholders into a task force to deliver three key ingredients. Firstly, identify end user needs. Secondly, facilitate the supply chain and financing. And thirdly, bring the offering to the community. Oh.
We can see everything just fine, Tombo. I don't know
Okay.
if anyone else is having that issue.
Are you on the right page? Is it on how do they play out in practice?
Sorry, Lana. I think that might be with you, but I'll forward you the recording afterwards.
So I can see the page, the first one, appliance road shows are not new, that one.
Yes, that is what is actually also showing on mine.
Yeah.
So it should be how do appliance financing roadshows play out in practice? Let me reshare again.
Yes, Hannah, absolutely. We'll be sharing the slides together with the recording of the presentation in about a week. Apologies, everyone. There seems to be some connection issues. Tombo, are you able to re-upload the slides? Would you like me to share them from my side? I think we may You're having connection issues with Tombo. Just send a message. I'm sorry, everyone. Tombo, can you hear us?
Yes, we can hear you.
I think Tombo is disconnected still. Rita, are you in the office? Would you be able to help Tombo?
I'm away. I'm listening from home, but let me just follow up on the side.
Tombo, if it's helpful, I can pull up the slides from this side. Your audio is not working, unfortunately. We can't hear you.
Can you hear me now, Tatia?
Yes, yes, yes. Okay, let me pull up the slides from my side.
Yes, please. Thanks.
Apologies, everyone. Like Tombo said, what is a presentation without some technical
Some
difficulties?
challenges. Sod's law.
No. Can everybody see the slides?
So if you can go to page 10, please, Tatia.
Do that.
Great. So yeah, the next section I really want to talk about what are roadshows and how do they actually play out in practice? So to answer this question, next slide, please. Cross Boundary, together with ESMAP, decided to test this approach. And we settled on Ethiopia as a priority country, since at the time we were anticipating the rollout of private sector mini-grids in line with the Adele program. Korile in the Somali region of Ethiopia was selected as the pilot location. And here there was a relatively large EU mini-grid serving about 650 households. It's a pastoralist community centered around livestock. It's a very difficult to access site. It's about an 8 to 10 hour drive from Jigjiga by road. So suffice to say, it's quite hard to reach. Next slide, please. So our first order of business was to convene a task force to drive the roadshow. The intent of the task force was to be the convergence point of the user needs, the machinery suppliers, and the financiers, and also where technical partners and government agencies could also feed into the appliance financing program and roadshow design. So the core members included, of course, the EEU, and the community representatives were consulted there. In terms of technical partners, of course, ESMAP was a key partner. We had VIDA, UNCDF, and of course, ADWA partners who were supporting on implementation. We consulted with RMI and CLASP as well. On the machinery supply side, we worked with a company called Ethelco and Glorious PLC, consulting with Energy Excel and Axel. In terms of government agencies, we worked with Maui, so the Ministry of Water and Energy, and also consulted with the Ministry of Energy. And in terms of appliance and capital goods financiers, we worked with local banks from the region, so that's Shebele Bank and Oromia Bank. And we also consulted with the Development Bank of Ethiopia as well as the Commercial Bank of Ethiopia. Next slide. So, given that the most important ingredients of appliance financing programming is identifying user needs, the first thing we did was this community consultation. And this is because really the people who know the end user needs the best are, unsurprisingly, the end users themselves. So this community consultation happened within Korile, talking to community members about their needs, priorities, and challenges, with regards to appliances, machinery, and financing. So some of the key takeaways from the exercise included, firstly, cross access to financing. There was really no banks or MFI in the immediate area, apart from 3 branches of an MFI called Hello Cash close by. Community members really had limited experience with personal financing, such as credit or loans. And in terms of appliance equipment demand from the community, they really wanted to focus around commercial appliances for the shops in the area and livestock-related equipment. And they were also interested in lifestyle appliances, including washing machines, TVs, and freezers and fridges. In terms of potential implementation challenges that emerged as well from the community consultation, we noted that there was a high rate of delinquency within the community actually on paying their EU bills. And this gave us a bit of a pause when considering loans. And also there was frequent power interruptions in this community because of the local topography. The community members were a bit reticent because of the reliability issues that arose from this. Next slide, please. So as a result of that community consultation, we were able to shortlist 11 different types of household, commercial, and livestock-related appliances in line with this community's needs and desires. So on the household side, that included things like blenders, TVs, washing machines, fridge, freezers. On the commercial side, grinders, drills, ovens, sewing machines, and hair clippers were included. And then on the livestock side, in this pastoral community, they wanted meat blenders and milk churners. To correspond with this equipment list, CBIL and Romeo Bank proposed to offer loans to the end users to finance this equipment. The terms were a tenure of 2 to 3 years and interest rates ranging from 16 to 20%, subject to approval. Next slide, please. So once this appliance list was finalized, and we had, secured the machinery, equipment, and identified the financing solution, we were ready to bring this entire package to the community. So the roadshow itself was conducted in December 2023 over a period of 2 days in Korele. So a roadshow team consisting of the local implementation partner, so that would be ADWA partners, and we'll hear from Dr. Tefera later on that, and representatives from both banks. So during the roadshow itself, the appliances and equipment that were on offer were exhibited and on display. There were demonstrations with the potential benefits of these appliances and equipment explained to the end users. And, most importantly, there was the opportunity to purchase or finance this equipment and appliances right then and there at the roadshow. Next slide, please. So generally, the roadshow itself was an exciting event for the community, and it really generated active engagement, especially from women, who were estimated to be about 60% of the participants. So in these pictures that I show here, we have community members inquiring about machinery. We have them inspecting what is on offer, and we also have them, interacting with the bank representatives of the roadshow. Next slide, please. So ultimately, we believe that this pilot demonstrated that the roadshow approach could be a successful way of scaling appliance financing programs and PUE. We have up to 300 people who attended over the 2-day period. We had high demand for appliances, including equipment that was purchased outright, including a washing machine, a grinder, and a sewing machine. Community members that didn't have cash on hand expressed and showed willingness to access financing for their purchases, and they signed up and registered for loans for specific equipment across the 2 banks. Next slide, please. But it really wasn't all plain sailing. And it's important for us, of course, to learn from the challenges and also the things that went wrong during the roadshow itself. So next, we would like to hear perspectives from our implementation partner, Dr. Tefera Gesmu from ADWA Partners. So next slide, please, Tatia. There's 5 questions that I'd like to cover. And the first question is, Dr. Tefera, what was it like introducing this roadshow to the community and how did they respond?
Hi, everyone. Thanks, Tombo. Thanks, everyone, for this opportunity. It's interesting. I think you mentioned a little bit about the excitement. One of the things that we've noticed when we had the roadshow was the community was overwhelmingly positive and demonstrated into, really genuine enthusiasm towards the roadshow initiative, right? As you mentioned, about 6 out of 10 people who showed up were women. It was not only showing up that was unique for us, but they were actively engaged with the displayed appliances, so asking questions and demonstrated an immediate willingness to purchase items right in there. But as you pointed out, I think the survey also pointed out is the issue was financing, but interestingly, most of the people were very motivated in signing up for loans and registered. About 96, almost a third of the people registered for loan processing right there and there. And with Chevrolet and Oromia Bank, surprisingly interested, almost half each of the attendants, the 96 people who have signed for loans, were asking for it so that they could purchase. And for us, that was unique. But what made it also unique in that sense is that the preparation that we have done, right, in terms of having government authority, local elders, made the event more, more of a celebration and trusted event. I think that had contributed quite a bit to it. Also, having one of the Somali-speaking, local people made it easier for us to be able to relate exactly what the appliances were and their use beyond the general understanding for the people. I hope I answered your question, Tombo.
Yeah. No, and definitely, I think, building the community trust by having, the elders there, having local language, the speakers really participating in the roadshow, build that trust, enable them to really participate and feel like this is something that is trustworthy and will be, something sustainable for the long term. But these factors all, meant that, these community members wanted to sign up for these appliances. So what was it? What were the factors that made demand really high in these communities?
I think a couple of things, right? First, as you pointed out earlier, Ethiopian Electric Utility has established a mini-grid and set up the infrastructure, but the lack of those, appliances, there is infrastructure, technology gap that was pent up that I think this initiative tapped into perfectly, made it, very exciting because there was that energy, as you said, even if it has its own issues, but the absence of access to the appliances was one of the things that made it unique. The other thing is that what you mentioned earlier and talked about is the fact that a lot of the household decisions or users were female, right? The female participation, high rate of female participation made it interesting where, the items that were purchased, with the exception of one of them, were household appliances. That showed you that decision makers, the stakeholders were women, and I think that made it more exciting, I think, overall.
Great. And can you talk about some of the responses to accessing credit in the community? They signed up for it, but what were really the responses to accessing credit, and how did they Yeah, how did they respond to having that option open to them?
Yeah, this is something that they've never had an opportunity. As you pointed out earlier, these are mostly pastoral communities, right? And the service of banks were not even an understanding that was, common for them. The fact that the banks, through this initiative, were actually present at the site, and this understanding that they could borrow money and pay for these appliances, they were very motivated. In fact, we were very surprised in that, a third of the people were ready to buy, thinking that the loan approval will happen immediately there and there, right? But the fact that when they realized it would take process and approval timing, was they were a little bit disappointed. But other than that, the purchase was made out of cash, right? People came and paid for their cash. The first day was exciting, but the thing happened in the second day was equally exciting. That tells you people who came the day before did not come back. More and extra people came in with understanding that there's a potential to access finance and the ability to, I think, have appliances to make their lives, particularly family lives, I think, simpler and improving their livelihoods, I think, in general.
Yeah. And Korile, Dr. Tefera, is a very sort of unique place. There's a lot of unique rural communities in Ethiopia and across the continent. But could you potentially highlight some unique factors for this specific community and how we should take these sort of unique factors into consideration when we're thinking about designing such initiatives?
Yeah, I think, I mean, this is not new to anyone on this call, I'm sure. Understanding cultural context is really core to the success. As I pointed out earlier, the fact that, the initiative, the way Cross Boundary designed it in a way that addresses the community need based on including government authorities that have a say in those cultures and cultural leaders that give the initiative credibility, right? And then the pre-effort before the road show, you remember you were on that road, Tombo, is a difficult place to be and very neglected in that sense of no access not only to banking finances but to appliances in general. So understanding the actual need of the community, and then having that contextualized understanding of what gives credibility for initiatives like this. All this pre-preparation, I think, has made it the success it is. And I think the lesson for us is that there has to be obviously a really understanding of the community, their need, and then this outside in thinking, right? That's very rare in programs that I've been a part of. It seems like people come in without understanding the needs of the clients, what is their pains and gains, and exactly how can we relieve that pain for them, and what would they gain by having appliances. And so that kind of understanding is really, really important, right?
Okay. And I think you've highlighted already some recommendations on how we could do the next roadshows better and things that we should underline and make sure we take through. But what else would you underline to say future roadshows should take into consideration to increase their success?
I think that what I mentioned, tapping into the needs of the community, right? Having an infrastructure and not having the access for, either consumption goods or appliances like the roadshow had was really important. But there are other things, right? Understanding the need and pre-arranging credits, right? One of the things I think at the point of sale, if we had a way to approve credit, I think we would have sold almost everything that we had. There was nothing that people did not want or have no use for from everything that you listed earlier. The only thing was that the shortage of cash and the lack of pre-approval for credit. So if there was arrangement, had we known that some of this credit approval were done earlier, I think we would have had even a greater success, right? The other thing is when we do this roadshows, there has to be an understanding what happened after the roadshow, after we sold these items to them. There's no maintenance, there is no, if anything break down, there is no understanding of what happens, who fix it. As you said, it's 10 hours away from the next town and a remote place. And so this understanding or thought process that needs to happen is that what happens after the roadshow. It's one thing to have it be successful, and what is the follow-up? What is that we need to do? And I think there's a strategy thinking. And the other thing I think I would add is this bundling product strategically, right? What are the things that they need to use all the appliances we took for them efficiently? That kind of thinking would be, I think, important overall.
Great. Thanks, Dr. Tefera. I'm sure you'll have more questions from the audience. Tatya, if you will just flip through the next couple of pages, which I think were just some pictures to guide through the questions, and go straight to page 25. So what happens next? How do we scale roadshows up for more PUE on mini-grid sites? So in addition to what Dr. Tefera has already said, or in synthesis, really the recommendations that we have going forward can be bundled around three things. So tailored financial options, increased community engagement, and careful site selection. So starting with tailored financial options, Dr. Tefera, this is what you've highlighted first. Flexible and quickly accessible financing solutions are important. Having the ability to potentially have pre-loan signups so that community members are able to pick up equipment on roadshow days would really increase the likelihood of success here. And also doing interventions like providing guarantees to banks to enable them to offer more favorable terms to the end users would also be an incentive. Secondly, on increased community engagement, this again is critical. We, going forward, would recommend conducting multiple community engagements prior to future roadshows, also including community associations and representatives within the task force for roadshow planning. And to Dr. Tefera's point around what happens to this machinery after the roadshow leaves. It would be important to engage equipment suppliers closer to the roadshow venue, not only for potential price savings and efficiency, but for serviceability in the long term as well. Lastly, around careful site selection, it was really very challenging accessing this community, but that doesn't mean that community doesn't deserve to be served. However, sites that are easily accessible with sufficient load capacity and high uptime are really key ingredients to making roadshows a success. Next, please, Tatya. And there's also additional incentives and value drivers that can be taken from other appliance financing programs and employed on these roadshows to further increase likelihood of success. For example, on the financier side, arrangements with developers to share payment data could support in reducing risk, identifying partners or programs that offer training to banks and MFIs to serve this specific mini-grid customer demographic could be beneficial because it can reduce the perception risks that financiers have for these rural customers. You can look at incentives to reduce collection costs through either mobile money or integrated billing processes with developers. On the end user side, we also see a lot of potential to leverage parallel development programs to really maximize the potential to increase incomes. So what does this look like? It could be programs that offer loans for business needs outside PUE. So can they get loans for stock for their shops? Can they get loans for agricultural inputs that enable them to fulfill their growth plans? Can they get enterprise development support and investment readiness support? A critical factor is also route to market support. If they, produce all this surplus produce and they can process it, where can they sell it beyond their immediate community? Lastly, developers can also be supported. So they can be supported to lead developer-led hubs in PUE. They can also be supported to expand their generation, given that there'll be additional load coming from these PUE and appliances that are new to the grid. Subsidies for ancillary equipment can also support in reducing the financial barrier. So there are a lot of different levers, and maybe not all can be available, but the more that can be employed, the higher the likelihood of success. Next. So very quickly, going forward, we are developing a roadshow design that can be implemented at scale with the support of local implementation partners, such as REAs. And the key activities will remain the same. So task force convening, equipment curation, finance facilitation, and market activation. And those activities will take place in a proof of concept, POC, in a set number of sites that can produce a replication playbook for local implementation partners to implement at scale. So that'll give them a proven framework based on real-world performance data and lessons learned in the proof of concept, and a scalable model that they can use to rapidly expand successful PUE to hubs nationwide. Next, please. So at the beginning of this webinar, we all shared our perspective on what we consider to be the key barrier or the key barriers that are hindering the scale-up of appliance financing. I hope that we've shown that the roadshow approach addresses many of the key barriers across the demand side and the supply side, and really could support appliance financing to scale. And this is important because we know that it works and it increases consumption sustainably on mini grids, and it also improves community livelihoods. So I would love to throw it back out to the audience and say, would you consider testing this approach out? And what are some of your key questions? Would love to hear that next. Over to you, Tatia.
Thank you so much, Tombo. Thank you, colleagues. I hope you can hear me okay. I'm doing 3 things at once, but I think you should be able to. So thank you so much to Tombo and Dr. Tefera for this very interesting presentation. I think it was really illuminating. I mean, obviously, we worked fairly closely with Tombo and Dr. Tefera from our side, from the World Bank side, on supporting this program as the team that was rolling out the Ethiopia Adele project at the same time. So happy to shed a bit of light on that. But I see that we have a few questions already in the chat. So if it's okay with you, Tombo, Dr. Tefera, I think let's go to those questions first. I've prepared a few questions from my side too, but I think the audience questions take priority here. So I will address these to both of you, and then feel free to just come in and share your thoughts as you think makes the most sense. So the first question is the income in the communities harvest dependent? If so, how did you take into consideration harvest season when timing the roadshow? And I think that's an important question in terms generally about the timing of the roadshow. Tombo, I think you'll have quite a bit to share on that experience. And then the second question from Lana is who is there to service the appliances? So over to you both.
So I think the first question is a great question. Can we match the incomes tied to harvest? So this particular community was a pastoral community, so not really a typical community where really we see that harvest dependent income flow. But still, it still underscores the point that these flexible financing solutions do have to match income flows. And that's one of the things we would wish to see more with financing partners going forward. I know for CBIL Bank and Oromia Bank, they were quite strict on what they could offer the end users. But flexibility, especially with these varying incomes and cash flows at household level, is something that we certainly look for when we're thinking through what appliancing solutions to offer. And also the timing of the roadshow, well, that was impacted by a bunch of different factors. And maybe I'll hand over to Dr. Tefera to think through that, to talk through that rather.
Yeah, thank you, Humbo. The first question really interesting because I think one of the things that helped us be successful is that we timed it. As Tombo pointed out, they're pastoralists, but they have a marketing dates, right? Saturday and Sunday were market days, so we made sure that the roadshow happened when people were gathering in near market areas. So it didn't take too long. But I think the question is really a general one, an important one to consider in the future roadshows, right? Harvest season and flood season and issues like that do exist. And I think considering that is an important one. The second question about who was there was that what we did was we actually contracted people who have knowledge from ADIS to go with the team, with our implementation team, to be able to demonstrate some of the appliances that right in there, because it required some of them milk churning and meat grinding machines that really people had to have some knowledge on and answer a specific question, including helping them start up some of the purchase items. So there were people that went with them to do that.
Thank you both. From my side, just to mention that in terms of seasonality, while this wasn't a big consideration here, what was a big consideration is accessibility of the community. And that is why for several periods of time, the team, Cross-Boundary Innovation Lab and ADWA Partners team had to delay the roadshow due to the monsoon season as well as the security situation in Ethiopia. So all of these considerations are real, obviously, and they are factors that affect even whether that's a seasonal dependent community or not. Those are definitely considerations that are important for all of us. Most of us work in fragile contexts and contexts where circumstances change quickly. So it's definitely something to keep in mind from my perspective. That was one of the lessons, certainly. Let me move to the next question. Do you have any gender perspective on productive uses of electricity? Tombo, I think that's a broader question to your research. For example, are women-led rural enterprises found to be more sustainable than male-led ones? Also, in your experience, can women entrepreneurs independently access the loans, or do they require consent from male family members?
So from our research at the lab, we have focused on broad appliance financing programs where we haven't highlighted specific women-led or women-focused programs. However, in our community assessments and needs, we do try to highlight and uncover what the needs of the women are in those communities. And usually these are, the business women, running the shops, the small industries. Anecdotally, they are successful in their businesses, they pay back reliably. But in terms of data to back that on a disaggregated gender level, we haven't done that strictly as the lab. In this community itself, I think, Dr. Tefera, I'll leave you to reflect on how the gender dynamics played out in terms of the decision-making of the women. But the women were extremely engaged in the roadshow and throughout it. They did demand appliances themselves. But in terms of sort of the decision-making power, Dr. Tefera, I'll leave you to comment on that for this community perspective.
Yeah, thank you, Tombo. I think that there are two insights that we took from that perspective. The first one is that the most engaged people were women. The fridge that we were talking about, one of the fridge that was sold was a woman who owned a shop that sold cold water and sodas and so forth. So that told us that, I think, at least at the anecdotal level, that women are using, or at least have used this opportunity to improve their livelihood both at home and their businesses. In terms of decision making, culturally, the region elders made decision rather than men per se. Even when the women made decision, there were elder women than younger ones. But the cultural context in the Somali region are men that are older made the decision. So for us, there was no clear, at least perceptive distinction of who made the decision. We knew the women were engaged, wanted to understand. In fact, there was a funny story where the men were just sitting around when the women were asking a lot of really detailed question on how to use the appliances and understood what they're for, right? So that shows you women have a substantive role, at least in this community.
Thank you so much, Dr. Tefera. And this is a similar question, but in general, did you collect demographic information on those who engaged in the roadshow? And this person's asking, so for example, imagine there were differences in the pay by cash and take a loan group. Do we know the economic demographics of who this roadshow served?
Tombo, I can talk that from the fact that we have. I think you have the data, but the items that were sold, as I pointed out, one woman, one man actually purchased, the first day appliances. The women bought the fridge. So I think we knew that there was finance interest, and people have, as I pointed out, a third of the people that attended have registered. Remember, the banks themselves were very surprised to have that many people apply for finances, right, in a rural community. That required giving a lot of detailed personal information, and most of them were women. But I think the information we have has more to do with who purchased and who attended. I think, Tombo, you have that data to whatever level we have it.
Yes, so we don't have an attendance list of who came to the roadshow. We know the general demographic of the estimated amount of people. We do have the sign-ups of the people who went for the loans across CBIL and Oromia Bank. And I think we could make up a picture of the demographics of those people to share with the wider sector. But yeah, it's generally individuals from that community, the cross women and men. I think, I'm not sure if we have the age demographics as well. But we have the data on those who signed up and those who purchased. But unfortunately, we didn't take sort of attendance of who came to the community. But it was really a cross-section across the entire community, I would say. So as Dr. Tefera mentioned, we had elders from the community. We had the shopkeepers, the housewives, the youth, all who came through in this roadshow.
Thanks so much, Tombo. Dr. Tefera, we have a good number of questions coming in. So another one is, what were the preparatory studies that were carried out before launching the program? Just to shed a little bit of light on this, because Tombo referred to this earlier. So Tombo and the team and Dr. Tefera and his team at Adwa Partners, they worked with the Rocky Mountain Institute and a few other partners. So we in the World Bank had, when we first started designing the Adele project, we had partnered with the Rocky Mountain Institute to conduct a market overview, market sounding report to really get a sense of what are the appliances, not just the income generating appliances, but what are the appliances that are available, household appliances that are available, importantly, AC powered appliances that are available in the Ethiopian market. We produced a list of 15 appliances together with the Rocky Mountain Institute team, and we had requested them to then go on the ground mostly in Addis and get a sense of what are the appliances, how many of them are imported, how many of them are potentially either assembled in the country or produced in the country, and what are the financing terms, who are the importers. And then we made that study available to the Cross-Boundary Innovation Lab team and to the Adwa Partners team when they were designing the roadshow to supplement their own existing research in other markets, and other design considerations. So that's just my 2 cents from our side, that was part of our planning for the project design and implementation either way, but I think it really helped support this work as well. Over to you, Tombo.
Yeah, thanks for highlighting that, Tatya. And I think working with partners really in that stakeholder group in the task force was really helpful, because partners like RMI, partners like VIDA, partners like Axel, who had done work in these communities and in Ethiopia, we were able to leverage their work and consult them as we were thinking through what this roadshow could look like. But I think ultimately the most important thing for this roadshow and any future roadshow is going to that community itself and understanding what is needed there and what is actually available there. Because as much as, certainly desk studies and consultation can tell you what things might look like, going on the ground and seeing what is available, and actually going into those communities and understanding what is needed there is ultimately the most important thing to make this a success. But of course, that doesn't mean you should ignore the other work that has been done before, but rather use it as a foundational block to build on this very detailed community level information that will allow the implementation of roadshows for the future.
Dr. Tikar, did you want to come in here as well? We have quite a few questions. I'm happy to move to the next one.
No, I'm good. We can continue. Thank you.
So I think the next question is definitely for you, Dr. Tefera, and for you, Tombo, on the interest rates. And I know the Ethiopia situation is quite unique, so it would be good, I think, if you could talk a little bit about that and the collateral and how challenging that is generally for Ethiopian public and farmers. But the question is, the interest rates are so high. Was there efforts to seek programs to incentivize participation through better loan conditions, and how was affordability determined?
Yeah, so the interest rates were very high, and I think this is something that we struggled with throughout the whole Appliance Roadshow sort of design and implementation itself. So, initially when we were doing the consultation rounds, we did speak to the Development Bank of Ethiopia, Commercial Bank of Ethiopia, and eventually also CBIL Bank and Oromia Bank, who we ultimately ended up partnering with. I think what we heard back in terms of sort of the interest rates is really a lack of flexibility around being able to lower this rate at the level of offering this to the community. And I think more work is really required to work with financing partners to get to a level that is affordable. So, when we thinking through design for new appliance financing programs, we are really thinking through, what do guarantees to banks look like to enable them to lower this risk? What does it look like to support banks to really know this kind of rural customer and what it takes to serve this rural customer so that they can price their risk more effectively? So, this is something where, in terms of cross-boundary, we are learning from our other advisory partners. So we have colleagues in Ghana that are leading the Bridging Foundation. That is a MasterCard-founded initiative that is helping to increase financing to rural farmers and SMEs in Ghana. And one of the big things that they are doing is really working to train the banks on serving this rural customer base. And I think, from consulting with the banks, the commercial banks generally are making their money through bonds, treasury bills, interest rates of their, customer bases in urban centers. When it comes to these rural communities, though they may have a mandate to serve these communities, and I think for CBIL Bank and Oromia Bank, they really do have that mandate, and that's why they really expressed willingness to, participate in this roadshow and come out. Though they have this mandate, they still see and view that rural end customer as a high-risk customer. They are not used to making bespoke offerings for such a high-risk customer. So it was really difficult to get to the point of, having a flexible offering, I think, with these banks. And the same is proving true across, other geographies that we are working in, and really trying to work with financing partners to serve mini grid customers. So I think, this is a high level problem, an enabling environment problem that needs to be tackled along multiple factors, including training the banks on serving this demographic, including figuring out ways to lower the risk perception of these end users, including ways to lower collection costs for these end users, that all enable us to bring down that interest and financing cost. So I think broadly, that's what we see. In terms of affordability, we did, and willingness to pay, we did surveys at the beginning of the community consultation to get a view and establish a view of what would you be willing to sort of afford in terms of payment per month. Getting a sense of, many of these, as we mentioned, have not really had access to credit, so they're not used to credit. So we did do surveys at the beginning to get a sense of their willingness to, take on financing, and how that would impact their current energy budgets and household budgets, and what they would be willing to spend in order to access appliances or machinery. So that's what we did to establish the affordability side and willingness to pay side. But yeah, in terms of the financing and lowering the cost, I think this is a specific pain point and challenge that, we don't have the clear answer to, but have an idea of the various levers that we should employ as a sector to try and lower the rate of interest that is ultimately offered to mini grid customers. And maybe Dr. Farah can ask you to highlight some specifics for CBIL Bank and Oromia Bank.
Yeah, I think Tombo, you provided a really comprehensive answer for this. Maybe the only thing I could add in terms of the higher rate of interest rate was pervasive across Ethiopia at that time, and it's worse now than before. So it was not unique because it was that community. Even if you lived in Addis and wanted to borrow money from the banks, that's the same kind of rate. Even if you were a professional and with lower risk of repaying, that was the market. But I think the idea is this community-based financing, in addition to what Tombo mentioned, would be a great idea, right? To try to facilitate a formation of community saving groups or cooperatives that could pool resources and negotiate probably better terms from this financial institute, because the banks have interest. Remember, as we pointed out, there were no banks in for hours from that community, and it's understandable for the banks to be a little suspicious in terms of being able to collect their payment. But I think the response you gave, Tombo, was very comprehensive in the ways to approach and possibly reduce those rates, I think.
Thank you very much, Tombo and Dr. Tefera. Another question. The questions do keep coming in. I'm glad that we have another 15 minutes or so for the discussion. So what is the loan duration and the monthly payment amount, of course, depending on the type of product? Do you have that level of information from the banks, Dr. Tefera and Tombo?
Do you want to go ahead, Dr. Tefera?
No, I was just gonna say one of the things that we, at least from my recollection, the payment, as pointed out, would have been based on the items purchased. But the biggest thing at that time was that people understood what the items cost and expressed their interest, and we registered who wanted to buy what, and they applied for the loan. That's where everything stopped. The bank had to go back to do their own analysis, and we didn't have any access to that information really. And I think that's the only thing I remember from the report. Tombo, if there is anything that I've forgotten, you can go ahead and add some points.
Yeah. So yeah, generally that's the summary. So essentially the offering ranged across the two banks, and it was 2 to 3 years depending on the appliance itself. And CBIL or Romeo had 16 and 20%. I can check the specific amounts. Some level of deposit was required. But yeah, post the registration for the loans, we don't have visibility anymore, unfortunately, on ultimately what was offered. But those were the broad terms that were made available to the community.
Yeah, I see some of the questions coming in about the follow-up with the community, and it's definitely something that we internally are considering and have been discussing. As I'd mentioned earlier, there has been some delays with the implementation of the roadshow for several reasons outside of the team's control. Accessibility to the community was very challenging. And so by the time that the roadshow had actually happened, the pool of funds that we had been utilizing for the study had reached sort of its conclusion at the time. So we are considering, and we're engaging with the Ethiopia team to consider doing a follow-up to see some of the longer term results, 18 months out or so, to see whether the impacts are sustained and draw some additional data. But as Tombo had mentioned, her team have done longer term studies in some other programs that they have led, on which it would be good if she could shed light as well.
Yes. So yeah, in terms of sort of long-term impact, I think I added a few examples in the appendix of where we see the impact of appliance financing over time. Tatya, if you sort of flip to what's a good page to go to? Yeah. So I think this is a great example. So this is data from 11 sites that have grain mills, and 5 sites that do not have grain mills, over 20 months. And as you can see, many good sites with grain mills have higher capacity utilization than those without. So, I think what this tells us and what we expect in communities like Korele and others is that when you provide appliances and equipment, especially productive use equipment such as mills that are used regularly in these communities and that generate income in these communities, you see sustained increases in consumption and thus utilization. So I think this is one example with grain mills. I think I have another one on page 33. This is again on grain mills. I think what's interesting here is, apart from equipment, productive use equipment such as grain mills, I think another important thing that we see is that other income generating equipment is also very useful for these communities and very desired for these communities. So, what does this include? This includes things like sewing machines, drills, carpentry tools. We see that, when customers or community members really have a specific need in a community, they can really increase their consumption. So here we highlight the consumption of a tailoring shop in a specific community that has a much higher consumption than other appliance financing customers within that community. And of course, you can see that the appliance financing customers are, much higher than other customers in that community as well. So we have multiple iterations of this data across multiple appliances over, periods of up to 3 years that really show that, these productive use customers who are really providing or servicing a bespoke need in their communities, can really benefit from this, and they can sustain their consumption over time. And this really contributes to successful viability on mini grids over time. I think, when we hear back from developers on, where we can help them further improve on this, sometimes we hear that, sure, you've put this grain mill in this electric grain mill in this community. Yes, the grain mill is consuming, much more than some of my other connections, but this grain mill is only active 3 months out of the year. How can I get more utilization out of that grain mill? And, sometimes the answer alludes to, what I discussed in terms of helping the end users and the customers beyond just PUE. So what does that mean? We have a developer in one community that has supported their end users to actually buy agricultural inputs to increase agricultural production in that community so that there is more yield to go through the mills. So, that serves the developer's need of increasing sort of the utilization of the mill. But, ultimately, that end user also needs support to sell that produce beyond the community, assuming that they have met the community's needs. So there are also multiple other ecosystem factors that can be employed when pursuing these appliance financing programs that can improve the success of such interventions even further. But I think, fundamentally, we have the data that shows that when these, equipment and income generating machinery are provided to these communities, they are able to sustainably utilize them over prolonged periods of time. So I think we have enough data from other sites to really justify and evidence our approach.
Thank you so much, Tombo. I think it would be good to shift a little bit toward a scale up. I see that in one of the questions as well, and I had that on some of the list of some of the questions from my side, because I think since we're talking to World Bank colleagues as well, it would be really useful to hear your perspective on how do you envision this going forward. This is such high intensity, high touch work. How do you see that in the context of the M300? Obviously, that's kind of the big looming goal and target for all of us, the M300 platform. So how do you see PUE and appliance financing and appliance literacy, financial literacy, availability to financing, availability to customer service and post-sales support as well? How do you see all of that scaled up? If you can talk a bit about that, maybe also in the context of the compacts, do you feel that the compacts that the countries are signing at the moment give enough attention and focus to demand and income generation and demand stimulation, not just on mini grids? I know your team also do quite a bit of research on grid utility work as well, Tombo, so that would be really interesting to hear. And Dr. Teferi, it would definitely be interesting to hear from your perspective as well on how something like this could be scaled up in Ethiopia, for example.
Yeah. So I think, if I go back to, how we were thinking about scale up, and you can go back to page 28, Tatia, even though I'll speak to it more broadly in the context of M300. I think, this experience, as well as experience from other appliance financing programs in the broader lab work, has really, highlighted this need to have this, sort of intensive approach to really understand communities at community level and have this, one-stop shop view in really bringing together the equipment, the financing, and, activating the market, done almost at community level. I think, when we think about at national level, you might think about having hubs around some central communities. But really the principle has to remain that you have to identify those needs of the specific communities that you are serving. You have to pair those with affordable financing where possible. And I think the critical element is bringing those machinery plus the financing to the customers where they are. Given that it's really intense, and given that, companies like, cross-boundary, might not be best placed to really do this at scale, we really think, this approach of, developing a playbook that can be replicated easily through local implementation partners in a systematic way would really be an effective approach to scaling this cost effectively. And, I think that approach really, covers how we think about the broader ecosystem challenges, because when you are addressing what do the community need, what makes sense for them, you are identifying those machinery suppliers, you are identifying incentives for them to participate, you are identifying, the financing that matches that equipment. And once you start engaging all of those on a sort of task force level, first in these specific hubs and then nationwide, you start building that ecosystem that really serves to PUE awareness and brings in the private sector to ensure that these end users are served. But I really think an important part, and as we think about M300 and the compact and the scale up, is this linkage of the energy programs, the agriculture programs, the health electrification programs, like really, thinking through the synergies of how these all work together, and designing for that will really support, not only M300, but the success of these PUE initiatives. So, I see, increased attention to productive use of electricity, appliance financing, generally in the ecosystem and in the space. The World Bank obviously is a champion. I see, governments, you have COMESA now, you have DRC government. All of these governments have heightened awareness of the importance of this element. But what I'd really love to see is really tying that into their broader policy and programming. And, through this roadshow approach, really bringing in the private sector as well, and making sure we are sort of unblocking and incentivizing all of these different stakeholders to have skin in the game.
Thank you so much, Tombo. Dr. Tefera, keen to hear your thoughts on this as well.
I think Tombo spoke on this very clearly, but I think what I would add to something that she was alluding to is that this public-private partnership, encouraging that approach for sustainability of such initiatives, right? In Ethiopia particularly, what is lacking is that element of what is the role of the private sector in this, right? Government cannot do it alone. Development partners cannot do it alone. So how do we create that public-private partnerships to make it successful? I think from my experience in the REA project alone is that if we had the right kind of partnership, we could have had a more sustainable, including the financing. My experience with African Development Bank working in the Youth Entrepreneurs Initiative is that we need to have the private sector play role, and for that there has to be encouraging efforts that needs to be done from the World Bank and others, and bringing the private sector.
Thank you so much, both. I'm conscious that we have only a couple of minutes left, so I wanted to say a few things wrapping this up. First and foremost, a huge thank you to Tombo and Dr. Tefera for taking the time to join us for this discussion and share their experience in rolling out this roadshow in a very challenging context, in a very challenging environment. And hopefully we're not done learning the lessons from that experience just yet. But a couple of things that I wanted to point out to all of you, as Tombo had mentioned earlier, she and her team at the Cross-Boundary Innovation Lab, this is what they do. They pilot innovative models, financing models, to help bring down the cost of electricity, generally from mini grids, to rural customers. So to those of you colleagues who are designing projects, who are implementing projects where you think that their type of expertise would be useful, I do encourage you to reach out to Tombo and her team. They have the flexibility and the tools and the instruments that we have benefited from, and we are talking to Tombo and her team about doing a similar approach in other markets. Nigeria is one of them that we're considering, but others as well. I was trying to find a slide with your contact information, Tombo, but I think that is the only one missing in the presentation. So please drop your
slides up. Page 30.
Oh, sorry. Here, there we
Yeah.
go. There it is. Please drop your both of you contact information in the chat as well. Please also feel free, colleagues, to reach out to me if you would like an introduction or would like to follow up with the Cross Boundary Innovation Lab team for their global work and work across Sub-Saharan Africa, to Dr. Tefera for their work in Ethiopia with ADWO partners. Beyond that, just to thank all of you for joining and taking the time to have this really interesting discussion. Clearly, the number of questions that we have received in the chat shows that this is a very, very urgent topic for many of us working in this space. So again, thank you. We will be circulating a recording of the webinar along with the slides that Tombo and Dr. Tefera had presented within about a week of the event. So thank you all once again for taking the time. I hope everyone enjoys the rest of their day or wherever you are located in the globe. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Okay, cheers.
Thank you so much. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.